So this right here is the Chuwi Hi10 Plus. Now you're probably thinking, hang on, I've already seen this tablet before. Now you wouldn't be mistaken because I did review the VI10, which looks exactly the same, the VI10 Plus. However, this model here has double the RAM, double the internal storage, and it comes configured as a dual boot. So it's got Remix 2.0 and Windows 10 Home on it. Now to quickly cover the specs, so it's powered by an Atom X5Z8300. That can turbo up to 1.8 gigahertz. It has 4 gigabytes of single channel 1066 megahertz RAM. Now it was clocked slower on my unit, and I was able to actually change that speed to 1600 megahertz, which gives a boost of around 10 to 15% in 3D games, which will help speed things up a little bit, but you will probably lose about 10% battery life as a result. Now I do not know why Chuwi have it clocked like that. Now it has a 64 gigabyte eMMC, which is split between Remix and Windows 10. Also has wireless N and Bluetooth 4.0. And finally, a 8,400 milliamp hour battery, which is good for around 5 to 6 hours of use. So for an additional $20 US, you can buy this type cover style keyboard. And I do think it's well worth it. It improves the typing experience from using the on-screen keys, and you get reasonably good travel with the keyboard. Now, since it does lie flat, it doesn't have any flex or bounce, but you only get this one fixed angle when using it, which you're either going to love or hate. But I do believe that Chuwi have positioned it quite optimally there for the best angle and viewing experience when typing and using this on a desk at least. But on your lap, it's a little bit more difficult. So the case folds back up like this to support the tablet, and it is quite sturdy. You can press on the screen and it's not going to collapse. It has some rather powerful magnets in there that keep it all together, and also magnets when docking it if you want to separate that. Now, one thing I have noticed that if you do fold it up and travel with it, perhaps you've got it in a backpack and you've got some books or something pressing against and putting pressure on the keyboard and the tablet when it's like this, or folded up and protected there, that it will actually end up scratching the screen protector, the keyboard. This is something that happened on the VI10, which had a very similar keyboard design. Now the touchpad does the job. It's reasonably small. It does have hardware left and right mouse buttons, and it does have, unfortunately, the annoying gesture of the swipe up and down that cannot be disabled in Windows without a bit of a registry hack. So port-wise, you'll notice that we are missing full-size USB ports. We have a micro SD card slot, the Type-C port that only seems to be working at USB 2 speeds, micro USB 2 port. Now this will not actually charge the tablet, only the Type-C port will. Microphone, and then the micro HDMI, followed by a 3.5mm headphone jack. On the top, the power on, volume up and down buttons. Now these are made out of plastic, and they don't really have a very good feel to them. I mean, they do the job, but they're not really high quality. On the left, on the right, you'll find the stereo speakers that offer reasonably good volume. So build-wise, it doesn't feel bad at all thanks to the unibody housing. It is secured in place with these torque screws, top and bottom, on both the left and right sides. Feels solid, no flex. No complaints with it, apart from the plastic volume up and down and power on buttons, and also the case. This material they have used is just an absolute dust magnet. It just attracts any piece of dust or dirt that's out there on a tabletop or anything, just seems to latch onto it straight away. So the screen brightness is particularly good. It goes right up to 450 lumens of brightness, so it's a very bright screen, the same as the Surface Pro, with a resolution of 1920 by 1280. But you will notice here that outdoor use, it's very reflective due to the fact that it's a non-laminated screen, and it also has a screen protector on the top. So reflections are something you're going to have to battle with if you want to use this outside. Now looking at the screen indoors, you'll see that we still have a few reflections showing up here, but it's nowhere near as bad as outdoors. That literally I would not attempt on this tablet because of the fact that it's got the screen protector, it's not fully laminated. Now if you are after a fully laminated screen, have a look at the Chuwi HiBook Pro. That's got an excellent premium Panasonic screen in that one with a resolution of 2560 by 1600. But this screen isn't bad for a 3:2 aspect ratio. It's the same piece of hardware that Microsoft used in the Surface 3. It offers very decent colors, nice blacks, and I'm pleased with it. It's not a bad IPS panel at all. And I do feel with the lower resolution, it's going to be a little bit easier and more fluid in Remix and Windows versus the Chuwi HiBook. So I'm going to start out first in Remix. Now Remix is Remix version 2.0, which isn't in fact the latest version. This one's Android 5.1 based, whereas Remix 3 is Android 6 based, Marshmallow. So hopefully it's going to get that update later on down the track. Now there is no way to actually switch over to Windows directly within Remix. You have to go through a full reboot process, which takes approximately 30 seconds. Unlike Windows, when you're in Windows 10, which I'll show you later in this review, that you can actually just launch an application there and then reboot straight into Remix here. Now Remix, if you haven't used it before, is a very similar setup to Android. However, the way the launcher is set up and the way it's skinned is it's more focused on multitasking. And what that means is we can actually run some applications, not all, side by side. So if I run PC Mark here, this will come up first in full screen mode. But with some apps, if they do support mobile mode, which you can see this one does, because now we have this little icon here, that will in fact relaunch this, or resize that into, there we go, you can see now this is more like a 5-inch mobile screen or 5.5-inch mobile screen on the desktop there. So you can run various different things side by side there. Now how that would be handy would perhaps maybe you want to look at something in WPS Office, you're writing something down, you want to have two windows of things, then you can do that, which in Android, normal Android ROM that you get, for example, like on the Chuwi HiBook, you can't do that. And of course, the good thing about having Windows on here, that the games that you can't get on Windows Store, for example, some of those really cool Android games that you want to play, you can play them on Remix because, of course, it does come with Play Store installed, which you'll see is right there. And that works fine. I haven't had any problems. Overall, it's fluid. You get the occasional little stutter and things with the animation, and I'll just quickly show you that you can play some demanding games like Mortal Kombat X. You see, Mortal Kombat's got playable frame rates only just. You see it's a little bit slow and stuttery, but this is probably one of the more demanding games because it runs at native screen resolution. It doesn't actually upscale. Whereas games like Real Racing do upscale, and that's less demanding. But you can play this one just. Now let's have a look now at Modern Combat 5. So now just to quickly show you the start of Modern Combat 5 here, if I look around, you see that it's actually really smooth. Not bad at all. I'll just play a little bit of the game. So gaming performance is much better than I expected, but bear in mind that I have actually clocked that RAM at 1600 MHz, which wasn't the default that it shipped with. So that probably will help with the performance here. Now a very quick internet check here. So this is TechTablets, my own website, and it's quite image heavy, but it loads up relatively fast. And not bad, the performance. For an Atom X5 Z8300, it's good at light tasks. Things like this, it's perfect for. Just don't try to encode any 4K video or play AAA titles or anything like that, because that's not what that chipset is designed for. It's designed for efficiency, so it's not high power, it's more about low power consumption. So I just want to move over to YouTube and quickly check out how those speakers sound. So we got left and right facing, side facing speakers, and I have noticed that the 3.5mm headphone jack, there's some static coming through it, which I'm not particularly happy with. I'm a little bit sensitive to that. I like to have nice clear audio, and every time you hear, for example, the audio played when typing on the on-screen keyboard, there's a slight hiss to it, which is quite disappointing. So I just took out a track here from Carbon-Based Lifeforms and at the 100% volume, and let's have a listen to how it sounds. Okay, so the loudness is okay. It is actually louder than other Chinese tablets I have heard, but just like the typical cheaper Chinese tablet, those speakers, they don't really have any bass to them. So they sound quite tinny. They're not the greatest. So audio quality, I have to say that on the HI10 Plus here isn't the greatest, but the speakers at least aren't as bad as some tablets. Now I do like to run a few benchmarks, and one of the things I wanted to focus on and definitely check out really detailed and thoroughly was the wireless performance in range, because I know a lot of people have been concerned about the all metal body on it, saying the wireless performance hasn't been good. Well, I've actually got good results. This is the same level as the floor of my wireless router, and those speeds there are excellent. Uploads, that's pretty much the highest I can get out of my 4G connection that I have. Now I tested out the signal strength, you can see right there. So it's negative 40. And when I went downstairs, I repeated the same test, which is quite far away from the router. It has to go through reinforced concrete, a floor and everything else. And you'll see that the same result there. Notice that the download speeds did drop down about 25%. Now that happens on every single mobile tablet that I test out. Even my Surface Pro 4, the speeds would drop down around 25%. So I haven't seen any issues at all with that. And the signal strength, yes, you can see it's gone down from negative 40 to now negative 60 there. But it was still fine, still performing well, and still showed 2 bars of signal strength there. Now, other benchmarks that did run out was the battery test in PC Mark. So this is 5 hours and 20 minutes, which is not the greatest score. This is quite average, this one. I had hoped for at least 6 hours. Now, in Windows, I can get around 6.5 hours with the brightness at about 20% and wireless on. So Android, for some reason, doesn't seem as good as Windows when it comes to battery life there. There's just the PC Work 2.0 score, that PC Mark. And here is Geekbench 4. And lastly, Antutu. Those were the only benchmarks I decided to run on this. Now, those scores, they're all exactly the same, on par with other Atom X5 Z8300 tablets. So some of you in the comments in YouTube and on TechTablets.com and the forum have been asking me, does the HiBook Pro Keyboard work on the VI10 Plus or the HI10 Plus, which I have here? The answer is yes, it actually docks in just fine. It works completely. The USB 2 ports work, they're on either side, but as you can see, it just looks a little bit awkward because we've got a 3x2 tablet docked into what is basically a 16x10 tablet's keyboard. So it doesn't quite fit right there, but it works fine. We can get the full angles then for the screen. And I do like the experience on, the typing experience on this one is a little bit better, but I'll show you what I mean. When it's folded up, collapsed, looks fine there. But when you turn it over, you will see that, yeah, it sticks out and the Hall sensor doesn't work. So you can see the screen is actually still on. So it won't automatically put it into sleep mode like it would with a keyboard that properly fits it. But at least it works, which is something, and it gives us those 2 USB 2 ports. So the HI10 Plus does support a stylus as well as the VI10 Plus version, but it's a very basic stylus. Now the one you need to get is called the HiPen H2. Don't get the HiPen H1. That's for another model. That one there has 128 levels of pressure sensitivity. This particular model has absolutely 0 levels of pressure sensitivity. It's just the one level that it has. Now you see right here, this tip actually is rubber, which is quite nice. Now to power it on, you need to push the little button there that lights up blue. And along the top, you can see there's the micro USB port there for charging it. So I'll just show you how it works very quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one here because it's not that great. So as soon as the stylus is on the screen and working, well, if it is going to work here. Hang on, I'm on the eraser mode, sorry. See, it works reasonably fast, but no pressure sensitivity there whatsoever. Now, because it's got the rubber tip, it's not actually going to scratch the screen protector, which is good. And once it's touching the screen, you'll see now there is palm projection. Now, I'm just going to try and write. This is where I run into problems, and I'll just explain to you why after I write this. I'm just going to try and write hello world. That W didn't come out very good. You can see there it's a little bit laggy, but the problem is you see there's some marks here. So the problem really comes down to the palm projection, which doesn't really work until the tip is actually touching the screen. And why that's a problem is as soon as you lift up the nib from the screen, then you lose all palm projection. And then my palm there ended up causing my text there when I was trying to write W for world to come out quite poorly. So this stylus I cannot really recommend. Now if you want a tablet, a Chinese one with a good stylus experience, have a look at the Cube i7 Book or the Cube i7 Stylus. Both of those models support Wacom styluses. So I booted over into Windows. I just wanted to point out one thing. I said in the Remix portion of this review that you couldn't go straight from Remix into Windows. I made an error there. You can actually, all you need to do is go through the Start menu and you have some options there. Restart, shut down, reboot, and then Windows. You tap that and then it will boot straight into Windows there. So I tested out the internal eMMC drive, which is a Toshiba 064 GEA. And here are the speeds I got. So 139 there on the sequential reads. Write speeds are a little bit slow, but the 4K speeds here are quite good. Now the touch accuracy of the screen, I've noticed it is quite good. I'm able to minimize and close things down relatively well there without too much problem. And the same goes for Remix too. Also wanted to point out that Chrome was slow, really. Here, Edge is just super smooth compared to how Chrome was running under Remix. Another thing also, I tested out my Samsung 128GB micro SD card. That can be accessed without any problems there, so that's good to see. Now, battery times, I get around 7 hours, 6.5 to 7 hours in Windows. So that's actually a lot better than Android with the PC Mark test I did, with a very similar kind of brightness, around 200 lumens of brightness. And also to mention that the charge times, you're looking around 4 hours to fully charge it when powered off. Now when you have it powered on and charging, it will struggle to get any charge. It only charges at around 1 watt when you have the brightness set to about 30% and you're not doing anything demanding. As soon as you start to do something demanding, so if you're gaming with the screen on 100% brightness, then you're not going to actually gain any charge whatsoever. You will slowly start to lose your battery level. So I have HW info running in the background here, checking out the temperatures. And I'm just going to have a quick test of Counter-Strike Global Offensive and have a look what kind of thermals we get. So it's on the Dust 2 map with 800x600 resolution on the lowest possible settings you can select. And the frame rate varies between, you can see the highest around maybe 40 frames per second, but it dips down to 17 I've seen. So not ideal performance here. I wouldn't really be getting this tablet for any serious kind of gaming. Now you can play titles like League of Legends around 30 frames per second, but again, lowest resolution, lowest settings. And you see that it's dipping down again to about 21. That's just really too slow. Even actually dropped down to 12 frames per second there. So really not ideal. So let's have a look at the temperatures now. So looking now at the thermals, we got up to 73 degrees, which is fine. Now the highest I have seen it pushing it really hard, looping 3D Mark's Cloudstorm benchmark, it got up to 78 degrees. So there are no thermal throttling and no problems with the temperatures of it whatsoever. It gets a little warm just around where the volume button is, just behind this area right here. But those thermals are perfectly fine for an Atom Z8300.
So to quickly just run over the pros and cons here. First I'll start off with the pros. I think that it's got a nice screen on there, very decent brightness on it. They can get up to over 400 lumens of brightness, which is ideal. Now it is a little bit reflective, as you can see here, outdoor conditions, but it's perfectly fine indoors. And I do like the 3:2 ratio as well. I mean, this screen was good enough to be in the Microsoft Surface 3. I do believe it is a very nice panel. Now it's good having Remix on there and Windows, so we can have the choice between the two operating systems. And you'll see the performance there as well, that I didn't actually expect Mortal Kombat X to have what I would call, well, semi-playable frame rates. It was a little bit stuttery, but most Atoms will only run that at around about 15 frames per second, at least Atom Z8300s. Now the audio quality was a little bit disappointing on my unit here. I have some static, some buzz coming through the 3.5mm headphone jack, and the speakers, while being a little bit louder than most other Chinese tablets, do have some static in there, and a little bit of hiss as soon as you play some audio. Now the battery life in Android turned out to be a little bit average, but it's not so bad in Windows. And my other complaint is the Type-C port is only running at USB 2 speeds when it should be USB 3 speeds as advertised. Typing experience on the keyboard, not too bad as well. The camera quality is average, good enough for, I'd say, Skype calls and good lighting conditions, but I wouldn't be taking any serious photos with them. because really they just come out very grainy and poor. So it's not a tablet for taking photos. I'll be using your mobile phone for that anyway. So thank you so much for watching this review, and hopefully I will see you back in the channel soon with more up and coming reviews. And if you haven't already, why not think about subscribing? Bye for now.